asked the doctor Rami about whether I should. Is it not good to not to wake up with the sun? But yeah, it's okay.
We're all different.
Yeah, it's fine. I have enough sleep. I always sleep about 7 hours at least. I'm a sleeping beauty.
Tyler, do you wake up and expect to hear the sea still, or have you adjusted?
No, you know what though? In the room that I sleep in at my place, I don't really hear the ocean anyways.
Okay. Oh.
And it's a funny thing because everyone thinks, and I thought too, like, you know, you want to have a house where you can hear the waves. And turns out you don't actually. When you actually own a beachfront place where you could hear the, you know, as Lakeisha can confirm, if I wanted to, I could sleep in the sand. I have a house in the sand, which is, you know, 5 meters from the waves. And I have houses. I have 20 houses, so I could pick any level of waves I want, like in terms of volume. And
nice.
I want none. I want zero. So
yeah, because I'm thinking the house that I slept in, I feel like I heard the sea.
Yeah, you did.
I mean, I heard a lot that, you know, because we had that freak storm.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you
Also
came
heard
during a storm. Yeah.
from like 3 miles away. No, but you're right. You're right. I mean, it's white noise that isn't quite as silent, right? You know, yeah.
It's quite nice to hear the waves before you sleep and the first thing you wake up, right?
No.
It's very therapeutic. No?
No, I don't know. I don't want any waves at all. I want silence. Yeah.
I agree with you because I feel that since it's not a consistent, constant sound, and it wakes me up when I do the same as you do when I'm in the country home. I take Tyler, I'll take a room which is so I don't hear it. But
Yeah.
you do.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 minute past the top of the hour.
Okay.
Okay, Tyler, you want me to pin the link, right? Yeah.
I'm just gonna pin the room right now.
Yeah.
And let's make sure it's going. It's going. It's now pinned.
Replay is on.
Oh, is replay on?
Yes.
Cheryl, can you please record the room or whatever that means? What?
Okay, you have to give me the green bean first. I'll try.
Okay, hold on.
But you will compare the quality before you post.
Basically, Tyler, you don't need to do anything. You just remember, don't turn it off. Otherwise, you will lose the file entirely. Yeah.
Okay. So let me know how it works. Because I'm going to try and post it to like Instagram or TikTok.
You don't need to do anything. Just remember, don't turn it off during
I heard you, yeah.
time.
But so how do I get the file at the end is what I need to know.
You will get it about after this room and 5 minutes after this room.
I guess I have to go
below
in.
Your bio.
Jesus
under
Christ.
the club and under your profile. You'll find that file. You'll find that room. Actually, it's a room.
Okay, so BB, I don't have to press any button, right? It will automatically
just remember,
be recorded.
Don't turn it off.
Okay, so Tyler, don't turn it off.
I'm not going to turn it off. I just need to learn how to get the file after the fact.
It will appear below your profile.
Yeah, it will appear.
Not in Club Deck, it doesn't, and I use Club Deck, so that's why my question.
Okay, maybe I'll see it below my profile.
Yeah.
I'll
and only Tyler, you are the only one can download that file.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I can tell you later.
Okay, we'll try anyhow today.
Okay.
If not, maybe tomorrow I will open the room. Then I will start the room. Then you come after that. Then
yes, only the one who start the room can download that file. So only one person.
Yeah.
This you, Tyler.
We heard that already. So I'll hopefully when this room ends, I'll get out of Club Deck and into the Clubhouse app and see how it works. Okay.
Yes.
So the first story, first things first, we need an air horn.
Air horn.
Yeah, hold on. And where's our air horn? There it is. Okay. So the first big story of today, happy Wednesday, November 10th, is that Unity, which you've heard me talk about in recent days, including yesterday when we were Do you remember there was a headline yesterday that Niantic, which is the makers of Pokemon Go, were launching a new metaverse creation tool or platform so that people can make their own metaverse experiences on their metaverse platform that they called, anyone remember the name of it?
Yeah, it's called Lightship AR.
What is it called?
Lightship.
Lightship. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And remember when we were talking about that, I said clearly Pokemon Go's parent company Niantic is entering that race, and now that means that in that big race to make the metaverse, which is the embodied internet, which might be where we spend the next 100 years of ourselves. Like, we will look back on the age of laptops and smartphones, like people look back on, using papyrus scrolls and squid ink, to write things. Like, that's how antiquated, a two-dimensional screen will seem once we enter this three-dimensional metaverse. And so make no mistake, there's going to be some huge companies built out of the metaverse, just like there was out of, the desktop computer era and the smartphone computer era. And now we're going into the metaverse era. And so far, it's Facebook who seems to have the biggest appetite and ambition. And then Niantic just announced yesterday, 24 hours, that they have a platform. And that's the point, is to create in the metaverse. Facebook is going to make it very, very easy to allow a lot of people to create in the metaverse. So does Roblox, by the way, as Axie Infinity. And now today, one of the other key players, big players in this space, is a company called Unity, which Unity is by somebody I consider a friend, David, who's the founder, CEO, former CEO. He's now I think he's now just the chairman of the company. He's from Denmark, but he works here in Stockholm, Sweden, believe it or not. So, and he has spoken at my events many times, and he's a lovely dude. And his company, Unity, started out years ago as a way for game developers to make video games. But they've taken it kind of way beyond that, and now you can make, metaverse experiences. And so they are a very big player in this big race to make the metaverse. And the top headline today is that Unity is acquiring Peter Jackson, who's the maker of the Lord of the Rings movies and the Planet of the Apes more recent movies. Peter Jackson's renowned for the visual effects, right, from Lord of the Rings, how they made people look like goblins and orcs and, all these really creative characters that looked incredibly real, but were, in fact, in many cases, digital, right? Now, imagine if we had that level, Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings level of technology in the metaverse. Imagine you could create an avatar that was as lifelike as Gollum, the little evil character in Lord of the Rings. Well, Unity just acquired Peter Jackson's visual effects company called Weta Digital, which includes 275 engineers for the very, very low price of $1.6 billion. So that's quite a very bold move indeed. And that, as somebody who would like to make experiences in the metaverse, the idea of being able to do it on a kind of platform with sort of the geniuses behind Peter Jackson's films, holy smokes. I mean, this is a very strong move. And I imagine Mr. Mark Zuckerberg's waking up with a little bit of an unsettled feeling this morning, because that's like fantastic. And by the way, even before this acquisition, which is being announced today, Unity was already really at the cutting edge of what is possible in the high fidelity of the metaverse. Like in their game development, they had a video that they released about 6 months ago that showed, the quality of stuff you can do with the lighting of a scenario where you can control, you can put the sun, you can move the sun wherever you want it to be and affect where the lighting goes and change it's just the quality and the fidelity of the experience that you can create in Unity is limited only by your imagination. It's truly stunning, really, really stunning. I mean, just really, really impressive. And this acquisition just even takes that even to the nth degree. I mean, really just the best that the world has ever seen. And I got to say, it kind of gets me excited. The idea of this combination of Peter Jackson's digital effects with Unity in creating video games in the metaverse. It's just stretching my mind with a little bit of excitement, actually. I just got more excited about the metaverse than I was a day ago. So I wonder if JT, how you think about it.
Yeah. Currently, I am at AWE, which is an augmented reality, virtual reality conference out here in Santa Clara. And the metaverse is like a huge topic over here. We're just like talking about it left and right. They probably heard it like over 100 times. And Niantic actually had their keynote presentation today, and the CEO was here talking about Lightship, which you just referred to. And he talked a lot about. He probably said it more than 50 times if you heard the original. Um, Monday sort of presentation about shared experiences and connected experiences, something that's going to be very pivotal in the physical metaverse, the real world metaverse that you can sort of explore on based on geolocated places and AR experiences that you can sort of anchor to those places. And one of the things that Unity is great at is being sort of like the go-to plugin for some of these world creation kind of tools. Facebook, Oculus, Meta, Horizon sort of ecosystem, whether that's workrooms or whether that's worlds or venues. They all use Unity's plugin, and their new avatar system is also going to use the Universal Avatar SDK. Is going to be a Unity plugin that apps can actually incorporate into their own apps. And so we're starting to see sort of like this war between Unity and Unreal Engine, because Unreal Engine is also part of the Epic ecosystem, which does Fortnite, and so they have also a production sort of studio, which a lot of what do you call Hollywood movie studios use for these high level productions. And so moving forward into the metaverse, giving creators the ability to create sort of these template form kind of virtual spaces is going to be like very, very important, because obviously no one can create, these kind of sophisticated kind of worlds on the fly. So these kind of plugins are going to be, this kind of acquisition is very, very important. So I can understand why you're sort of like very excited about this. And
right.
Yeah, you're right. We're all going to be living in the metaverse pretty soon, and it just takes it to a whole nother level with this acquisition.
Yeah, the fidelity. And the other thing is people are assuming, oh, I'm going to have to build everything from scratch. And that was true in the early days of the web. If you wanted to build a website, you kind of had to start from the beginning with HTML hand coding. I had to. I remember that back in 98, 99. And then there's tools that came out like Dreamweaver and, Macromedia Dreamweaver and all those things that kind of semi-automated it for you. And now it's become much things like Wix and Squarespace, go an incredibly long way to making it incredibly easy to make websites without knowing any code at all. And that whole concept, when you apply it to the metaverse, is equally true. You're not going to have to know any code or anything. You're going to be able to take assets in libraries and avatars that already exist that you think are fantastic, and then edit them to your heart's content. So you'll be able to take, the Golem character from Lord of the Rings as your starting point, or you're going to have millions of options as your starting points, and then be able to edit them and tweak them to customize it to your liking, and then save it as your creation. And it's this I can imagine already. This is, by the way, how developers are building the web today. Anyways, very few things are done from scratch. They start by borrowing from a library of pre-existing work, which saves them, just uncountable number of hours. And or you find somebody who did some really incredibly difficult work, and they will charge for access to it, which Stripe would be a great example of that, where they figured out how to do allow your website, like Clubhouse wanted to offer the tip jar functionality. That is very difficult to do very securely, to make sure all the transactions are very secure and safe. And so, rather than hire a team and play with that for many, many months, they did it in literally 10 minutes by using the amazing work that Stripe has done over the years to enable that. And Stripe makes it incredibly simple to borrow one line of code and add it to your website and enable those features. The same will happen in the metaverse, where if you want something that is truly, if you want to enable transactions in the metaverse, then Stripe, needless to say, Stripe will eventually figure out how to offer what they're doing in the metaverse. And same with, for example, if you want to send out emails to everybody you engage with in the metaverse, and you walk up to somebody and say, hey, you want to join my email list? And if they accept, well, then you need a tool for that. And, MailChimp will have to figure out how are they going to exist in the metaverse. And, every app today, the dating apps, WhatsApp, everybody and their brother is going to try and figure out how to exist in the metaverse, just like they had to figure out how to exist on smartphones. And there were a lot of companies that were the smartphone platform itself gave birth to hundreds and hundreds, really thousands of new solutions that we previously didn't even know we needed, like Uber, which you couldn't do before a smartphone. So the same is going to be true of the metaverse. The metaverse is going to enable thousands of new solutions that we still don't know that we are going to want and need, and are going to change our lives in fundamental ways that we don't yet even understand. And there's going to be lots of casualties, because when the smartphone came out, it killed lots of companies like Kodak. And there's going to be a lot of companies that get killed by the metaverse because they can't figure out how to transition. You could say the dating apps, and you could even, in a smaller sense, say banks. Banks are being severely disrupted by smartphones, by little fintech apps like Revolut and Monzo and N26 and PayPal. And, you add all those fintech apps up together, and they're cannibalizing fintech. But what is finance going to look like in the metaverse? I mean, and what is dating going to look like in the metaverse? Because the dating sites got killed by Tinder on the smartphones. Who's going to take over dating in the metaverse? Who's going to take over finance in the metaverse? What is healthcare going to look like in the metaverse? It's very mind-blowing kind of stuff. So
I think, Tyler, it's an interesting analogy about the creation of the iPhone or smartphone, because, smartphones started being developed in Silicon Valley back in the early 1990s, and then in Sweden and in Helsinki in the early 2000s. But it wasn't until the iPhone came out that all these infrastructure pieces came together, and the interface became very smooth. And we had the creation of independent apps and app stores far before the iPhone. But it was one vendor, Apple, who really brought it together. And I think with the metaverse, it might take a similar feat, where
correct.
There's a lot of wheels spinning until everything comes together at one moment.
Yeah, that the Apple moment, whenever they decide to announce, their kind of grand plan for the metaverse, that is going to be a turning point in technology history for sure. And everyone knows it, and it's just a question of how, when, and where. JT, what's the best guess on that? The Apple's.
Yeah. So I read a patent from Apple, their first sort of like metaverse hint or announcement, unofficial announcement, if you will. Those who read patents. So they developed this. productivity meetings app. So essentially, it's pretty much like Horizon Workrooms, where you're able to get on your VR headset and do productivity meetings in your avatar form and in a 3D sort of like office environment. And so they're releasing something similar to that. One of the things that I find interesting about that is that the different functionality that's sort of like embedded within that space. So like let's say for example you are in a meeting and you want your avatar to represent everything that you do in terms of movement, they can do that. But let's say you move away and you have to go, do something else. They can have the avatar sort of be stilled in that same position and have sort of like an indicator above the user's head saying that you're away, or you can have sort of the avatar doing some form of like idle movement while you're sort of not in that active mode. So they're playing around with it, but it was sort of like their first unofficial announcement into the metaverse through a productivity, I guess, angle. And I think that's very important because at the moment, that's sort of the only angle they have in terms of the metaverse using productivity tools, whether that's, their pages or keynotes or whatever the case is, in order to really make that as a selling point. So that's sort of like the small step in that direction, trying to compete with Facebook's their attempt to get into the sort of the productivity space as well. They
Yeah,
don't want to sort of lose the stronghold that they have
right,
into the future of computing.
right. And their Tim Cook has said in a few interviews, one I recall very distinctly with Kara Swisher, where he says AR is in a very big way the future of Apple. And he's specifically saying AR and not VR. And he seems to be concerned about the dystopian cases of VR, of, people, and Apple's already, aware of the propensity for people to spend too much time on their phones, and especially kids. And that's why they enable these tools of like parental controls and reminders. You need to stand up and go for a walk and da da da. And I think he already understands that VR is going to exacerbate that problem exponentially. And they don't want to find themselves enabling a dystopian world or use case. And AR is very, very, very different from VR in that regard, where your AR is about, getting up and walking around town, and it moves with you, where VR is kind of a more isolating experience. And so it seems to me they're much more interested in AR, and in fact, in many ways, AR is harder than VR from a technical standpoint, and that's why we might see, they're kind of lagging behind. And it seems like Facebook has a head start, but it's because Facebook is more directly focused on VR, which is technologically going to happen first before AR in a big way. But with all of these recent announcements, I mean, two major announcements in the past 24 hours of both Niantic, Pokemon Go, creating their own new metaverse creation platform, and Unity acquiring Weta, WETA, Peter Jackson's digital effects company. You know, all these big headlines, especially the Facebook's big event last week with their big live stream, announcing Meta. You can't. I mean, Apple has a history of not being affected by what the other players are doing and kind of taking their sweet time, and yet they can't wait forever on this. So it's
Tyler, quick question here, because I think you're making an important comment. AR between VR.
Yeah.
Now, Facebook doesn't have an access to the real world. It's a software platform, like the video game platform, the same. So VR is a logical way for them to go. And if you would like to take the analogy of the Matrix movie, where you have that VR space, because it's not the AR space in the Matrix movie, when the people plug in and they live their virtual reality, which is totally different with the avatars. And then basically the bodies are fixed at the place, and disconnect. And then over time, actually, physically, the bodies degrade because you don't have exercise anymore. Now, if you say that, and I fully agree that AR is much, much more difficult, but Apple and maybe Samsung and the others, they have the devices to the real world where you can actually combine virtual and the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Apple has a point here. So what would be your if I hear you well, so you basically say anybody has to go VR, even though AR is harder. And if Apple misses that train, they might have a problem in the future. So you believe that the race will be won by VR, not AR?
I'll let JT. This is really his domain. I mean, they're similar but different. It's a Venn diagram, and the circles overlap considerably. But AR enables all kinds of things that are unique to AR and don't exist in VR, and vice versa. There's things that are unique to VR that don't exist in AR. But to have a closed, I use the word closed because when you're in VR, you're not walking around outside. It's like strapping a phone to your face, and you don't have to worry about bumping into things. And the fidelity is very high because you don't have to bring in the natural world and the light and the car driving by you into that experience. So you can you can ignore real reality, focus on the virtual reality exclusively. And that means technologically, as JT can probably express better than I can, you don't have to do both simultaneously. AR is VR plus the real world intermixed in real time. That's why it's so much more difficult.
Yeah, it has markerless tracking, so that's kind of one of the key features that object identification and tracking, and then having corresponding physics. So the computer has to know, for example, that the spoon on your table can actually fall off or interact with things as soon as you reach for it. It has to have some sort of conscious, I guess, engagement with the system. Yeah, JT, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say everything, Tyler, that you're saying is definitely correct. I think with the VR component, you just get a high level of quality in terms of the metaverse world that you're trying to create. You're able to pack so much memory into an application on VR that you wouldn't be able to do in an AR sort of mobile device kind of experience, just because on the limitations that you're presented with. That doesn't mean that you can't, create AR experiences. Some of the things that we saw from Niantic and what they're working on, something that they actually call it Niantic Map. Pretty much it's like virtual positioning system. Is another level of sort of geolocated experiences where you're able to like literally pinpoint where you want to drop an experience. I'm talking like very specifically. I'm talking like under a rock. You can like literally pinpoint the position of that, and if you're able to create sort of like a metaverse space around that uh, position, that virtual position, that's pretty cool. What Aya was talking about, being able to understand the scene around you, that's definitely high level computer vision. And that's very important to like literally being able to detect not only objects and landmarks around you and being able to place, I guess, experiences around that, but that takes a
Right.
high level of computing,
Right.
processing and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
exactly as you're saying, is it has the additional difficulty of needing to understand everything around you all the time as you're walking, and in a very mobile friendly framework where VR can be very bulky and heavy because it's just you in a closet, and no one can see you, and it can be very bulky and heavy. It doesn't have to. And then AR, you're going to need it to be very light and small and agile, and yet have the additional burden of needing to understand every object that you see in your view, which is the combination of those two things is uh, significantly more challenging. And Apple
Yeah, but
is
but
the
it does
sense
it
I'm that
like Tesla, you know?
yeah. Yeah, you exactly. I mean, it's true,
Mario
true
Kart
challenging stuff.
versus Tesla. And of course, it's easier to have Mario Kart than Tesla platform, which is only going visual. They're not taking any other technology than cameras on the spot, feeding the platform at every single time, and that on a global scale. But then my question is really looking into the future. Maybe Apple has a very differentiated and a very competitive edge because they're able to have the devices and the technology to do AR, where Facebook, they've tried to get access actually to the customer itself because they don't. They have to go through the device of others. Of course, they would bet on VR. But then the question is maybe from an experience point of view, and because it's more difficult, AR is really something which has a much more interesting future because you can combine exercise and sports and other things rather than just being plugged to a computer, sitting in your room and having a virtual experience.
Right.
I think historically Apple is really good at developer tools. So I think the main focus here is going to be who can offer the best developer suite. And if you can do something like Google Stadia, that is stream high resolution content to a headset, but you're not playing a game remotely, you're hosting a development server or something like NVIDIA's Omniverse, and you're able to interact in a high fidelity manner and have assistants like these AI assistants help you with coding. I think if it can become more approachable for developers, I think that's kind of where you see everybody racing in that direction right now. Unreal and Unity are kind of neck and neck tied there, with each one trying to up the other in terms of, oh, you're doing Hollywood stuff. Oh, look at this. We got Weta. Oh, you're doing a VR editor. Yeah, we're also doing a VR editor. So there's a lot of similarities with some of these tool sets.
Okay,
I think that's a good.
Tyler, may I
lady
just say,
first. Yeah.
yeah, I just posted to TNATW a short video that I took in 2019. Apple had an AR experiment that they did in their Apple stores. If you went into an Apple store with an Apple phone and you held it up, you could see art by Nick Cave, who's a very famous artist, all through the stores. So they were in this space working on stuff back then. The other thing that's a really interesting tidbit is that in Horizon Worlds, you can no longer use Unity. You used to be able to import experiences into Horizon Worlds with Unity. The company that Meta used to be called made a bid for Unity, and it went through. So once back then Facebook wasn't able to acquire Unity, they stopped allowing Unity in Horizon Worlds. So this space is in flux. Stay tuned. Thank you.
There was
I
somebody
just had a
else.
couple of comments
Go
too.
ahead, Greg.
I agree with the direction of this conversation, and especially what JT was talking about with developer tools, because in my mind, this boils down to a few use cases and a killer application or two, which I don't believe has been discovered yet. And it's going to start with all these pieces coming together and developer tools, and then probably an independent developer creating what is the number one experience that people actually want to use this for. But it's going to require a killer application before, if this is to become something more than Second Life or its predecessors.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next topic here, which is the second biggest article, is that the judge who was presiding over the incredibly big, important tech lawsuit of recent months is Epic versus Apple. Epic Games versus Apple. Epic is the maker of Fortnite, for example, one of the biggest games the world's ever seen. Apple, everyone knows about. And Epic didn't like having to pay 30% of all of the all of the purchases in the Apple ecosystem to Apple. And because they're not paying that money to Sony on, the Sony PlayStation or to Microsoft on the Xbox, so why are they paying it to Apple on the iPhone? Is kind of the summary of their argument. And now the judge in that trial is now saying that Apple must comply with the court's order that was decided in that case, which of letting developers like Epic and everybody else link to external payment options. Because that was the decision like 3 months ago when that court case came down, or 2 months ago. And Apple's resisting that, right? And Apple's lawyers have tried to do a stay request, meaning Apple's trying to because as soon as that lawsuit went down, Epic was like, okay, great. Now you have to, because Apple took down Epic's account. Not only did they have to remove their games from the Apple App Stores, they shut down Epic's entire account or even ability to upload new games. They don't even have an account in Apple's App Store anymore. And Epic's like, what, WTF, bro? The judge just said that we can now do this. Go ahead and put our account back. Go ahead and take your sweet time. And Apple has said, no, we're not going to put your account back until you agree that you're done, that there will be no further appeals, that there will be no further trials. And Epic says, no, that's not how the law works. The judge said you had to do that. You got to do it right now. It's not contingent on further lawsuits that we're going to continue to sue you going forward. And Apple understands Epic's not done. Epic's going to continue to, set things right. And Apple said, no. We'll put your account back once you agree that there will be no more appeals. And Epic said, no, that ain't how it works. So now the judge in that case says, no, Apple, you can't wait until Epic's done with all of their further appeals. The court order was the court order. That's not contingent on further, cases. So Apple's got to, against, even though it's their store, essentially they're going to have to play nice. So it's a really interesting point here. Just to read a little bit of this article.
To put it a little bit more poetically, though, I think Epic said something like, hey, developers should not be minority shareholders in their own creative works. So it was, given how much tax software has to pay, and given how much Apple takes, the developers were taking less than the majority of the funds themselves from the sale of their own things. And Epic's store charged something like 15 to or as low as 11%, I believe, in some instances, which is a nod to the developers. And that has actually resulted in a few developers shifting over and moving to the Epic Game Store. Also give away a lot of games, so they've done a lot of kind of movement in this direction, and it was, I think, necessary for a company like Epic Games to stand up to Apple. It's kind of like the billionaire stood up to the trillionaire, but it's nice to see that at least it's not being totally abused, although when they did the stuff with Fortnite, their Fortnite account got closed, but so did their Unreal Epic developer account, so they were unable to post updates to the developer tools that they had developed or were used for development by people on the Mac platform. So that was also something that was resolved a little bit earlier. So this seems to be the same kind of Apple expensive lawyer tactics.
Check this out. So there's some interesting juice in this article. It says that Epic versus Apple judge Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers says Apple must comply with the order to let developers add links and buttons to external payment options to avoid the 30% Apple tax, denying the company's motion for stay. Quote, Apple's motion is based on a selective reading of the court's findings. Yep. And ignores all of the findings which supported the injunction. Her new order reads. Yep. Judge Gonzalez-Rogers issued her order after a Tuesday hearing concerning the blockbuster antitrust lawsuit, which Fortnite publisher Epic Games filed in 2020 and which went to trial this year. During the hearing, Apple said it needed more time to rewrite its anti-steering policies, rules that bar app developers from linking to payment methods besides the iOS App Store. Quote, this will be the first time Apple has ever allowed live links in an app for digital content. It's going to take months to figure out the engineering, economic, business, and other issues, says Apple attorney Mark Perry. No. Give me an effing break, dude. You just let people link out. It's pretty freaking simple. And he says, it's exceedingly complicated. There have to be guardrails and guidelines to protect children, to protect developers, to protect consumers. No, it doesn't. And we know it doesn't because there's this thing called the fucking browser and the internet. And you have the Safari browser and you're not so concerned about that, are you? You're not. It's barely any different. It's exceedingly complicated. There have to be guardrails and guidelines to protect children. Oh, really? So why doesn't Safari have those? To protect developers, to protect consumers, to protect Apple. And they have to be written into guidelines that can be explained and enforced and applied. And then Epic lawyer responds saying Epic framed Apple's request as a delay tactic made without any real commitment to change. Here's the quote: Apple does nothing unless it is forced to do so, says Epic attorney Gary Borstein. Judge Gonzalez Rogers was skeptical of Apple's request, particularly because it asked for an indefinite stay of the injunction, despite saying Apple just wanted more time to evaluate risks. Right. So if it's just a matter of complication and you technically need to figure it out, why are you asking for an indefinite stay? So you never need to make these changes. Why aren't you asking for, say, 2, 3, 4, 5 months? You're not asking for 2, 3, 4, 5 months. You're asking for infinity, forever, because you don't want to make this change. And she said correctly that you're using a selective reading or interpretation of the court's rulings, which is, it's like two kids saying, "Oh no, mommy didn't say I couldn't beat you over the head." She didn't. She never actually said the words, "I can't beat you over the head." And then they had to go back to mommy, and mommy says, "No, you can't actually beat your sibling over the head." That's a selective reading of, my decision. Apple exposing themselves as the bad actor in this, actually. They don't want to give it up. That's a huge gravy train for them. That is a huge amount of billions of dollars they make every year that's going to go bye-bye very quickly. As soon as app developers can charge their users directly and get 100% of that money and not pay the 30% tax to Apple, that's somewhere in the neighborhood. Does somebody know how much they make from the 30% cut from the app stores? It's tens of billions of dollars. I believe it's 15 billion is my guess, but I know I've... Huh?
Yeah, I believe it's 15.
Yeah, I recall it was 15 billion, somewhere in that neighborhood. So, you haven't asked, the judge says, you haven't asked for additional time. You've asked for an injunction, which would effectively take years, she says. You asked for access. You asked for an across-the-board stay, which could take 3, 4, 5 years. Perry responded that Apple wanted to delay the changes until the case was resolved, saying that it was confident we're going to win the appeal. That didn't sway the judge. In her order Tuesday, she accused Apple of wanting, quote, an open-ended stay with no requirement that it make any effort to comply. Apple has provided no credible reason for the court to believe that the injunction would cause the professed devastation with regard to the company's argument that it would be harmed by adding external links to alternate payment systems. Right. That's complete poppycock bullshit. And we know that because the web, the internet, the browsers do this already right now.
I think the App Store revenue is much higher, closer to 70 billion.
Wouldn't surprise me. Anyway, Apple, you're exposing yourself as the bully here.
That was gross, if you add every year. So it's like 55 to 70 something. So it's between 15 to 20. But
it's
75% profit.
It's 64 billion a year on average total revenue.
Jesus.
So it's 15% of that. So it's just under, on average, I think it's just under 10 billion would be if they're keeping 30%. But that's still a massive amount of money.
Okay, so Apple, come on. We know we understand you made it to $2 trillion somehow, and we oh man. Anyway, so the next that will be to be continued. The next one is from the Twitter Blue, which is Twitter has now a $3 a month subscription service if you want to be a power Twitter users. They call it Twitter Blue. They're now rolling it out for everyone in the US with ad-free articles across 300 publications, an undo button. That's kind of interesting. That could be really interesting. So, if I understand this correctly, and I believe I do, that if you get Twitter Blue, which costs $3 a month, it also includes some bonus features, like the ability to, cancel a tweet kind of right after you sent it when you realize you made an error, and other kind of interesting features that people have been asking for since Twitter launched in 2007. But It also includes ad-free articles from more than 300 publications, meaning when you click on an article to a Wall Street Journal article or a New York Times article, there won't be ads or pop-ups and roadblocks, and you'll be able to read the articles. That's amazing, because to get, if that's correct, and I would love to find out, because a New York Times subscription alone is way more than $3 a month. A Wall Street Journal subscription alone is more than $3 a month, and you might be able to get access to all of them.
That's huge.
That, if I understand it correctly, I got to read this article just to see, because if so, then they're going to sell a shit ton of these. So, Twitter Blue, the company's subscription service, is adding new features while expanding to new countries and platforms. The service launched in June, blah, blah, blah. Perhaps the most useful Twitter Blue feature is the undo button, which lets you recall tweets before you send. But as part of Tuesday's expansion, Twitter Blue is about to get a lot more useful for people who love reading and finding news on Twitter. One feature lets people view ad-free articles on participating websites and gives a portion of revenue from Twitter Blue subscriptions to those sites. If you're a Twitter Blue subscriber, when you come across a link from a publisher offering ad-free articles, you'll see an ad-free with Twitter Blue label under the headline. The feature builds off the company's acquisition of Scroll, which did exactly this, which offered similar functionality. And Twitter had said, and they were charging $5 a month on Scroll, I recall, and they acquired it not that long ago, like a few months ago. And it was like, oh, that's sad. They acquired it and shut it down, but now they're adding it right into their Twitter Blue system for $3 a month. So that's cool. And it seems like that is, and it does include the Washington Post, the Atlantic, BuzzFeed, Hollywood Reporter, The Verge. The question is, does it give access to other paywalled publications? Will be interesting to see. Okay, so it says Twitter Blue's ad-free articles feature doesn't let you pass paywalls. Twitter says, so depending on the publication, you might not be able to read some articles, even if you're a Twitter Blue subscriber. And unfortunately, ad-free articles aren't available on Android right now. Disappointingly, you'll still see ads on Twitter even when you subscribe to Twitter Blue, and don't hold out hope that an ad-free feed will be arriving anytime soon, if at all. Quote, we are not currently considering a Twitter ads-free product.
Unsend or undo before send? That doesn't make any sense. I mean,
it's like it does. They delay the send by 10 seconds. Gmail does the same thing, basically.
Okay.
No, but when you send a text, I'm sure you can delete it straight away. I'm still confused. Can you delete it? I thought that feature was already there.
Yeah, of course you can delete a tweet just like you do now, but what they're adding is the Gmail functionality of you click send, and then there's something unique about humans where as soon as we click send, that's when we actually read it, what we wrote. And that's when we notice we made a mistake. And within about 5 seconds, we normally realize, shit, I want to undo that. I do this in Gmail daily. I would say 1 out of 20 emails I have to unsend because I realize I forgot something. It's something weird in the, in the brains.
But surely when you send that tweet, if you delete it straight away, isn't that the equivalent to undoing it?
No, it still appears in people's notifications. That's the important bit here. If you send one and it's accident, you can delete it, but it still pops up on people's phones in the notifications if they have the bell ring. So they still see your mistake.
So I'm going to be the pink elephant in the room. I'm going to be the pink elephant in the room and say, in my opinion, so what? I mean, isn't that the kind of stuff they should be doing anyway for people? It's not that, even if they do ad free, the truth is that a lot of these publications and media outlets, the minute that they see someone is not paying and you can only read part of the article, people just walk away from it. So they're losing, people, and they're losing eyeballs instead of, people really caring. I mean, I've done it myself where I'll read an article, and if I'm not a member of it, I'll just walk away from it. So, it's on the long run, it's something that they should be thinking about, because if it's me doing it, I can guarantee that millions of others just like me are doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nida, it's even worse. Somebody tweets an article that's behind a paywall, and they can state whatever they want in there. But because people can't actually go in and verify their claims and be like, hey, the New York Times said this and that, this guy tweeted it, and there's no way for me to verify, so I'll just take his word for face value and walk away from it. I think they're shooting themselves in the foot.
I agree. And and really, I mean, they should, if it's a major message, they should have it in the first, 20 or 30 sentences of the article, because most people, they're just going to read that and not follow up. I mean, there was something actually that I wanted to send to Messi, I think maybe about a week ago. It was something about Africa, and I did send it to her. It was about the I think uh, an article relating to the maths and different apps and stuff that was going on, and I wasn't sure if she was a member of that media outlet or not. But I said, let me just send it to her just in case. But at least you can read the first few, a couple of paragraphs on it. And I didn't follow up, and I'm sure. I mean, there's a lot of people like me. In the end, they're the ones that are going to lose out because they're losing viewership, they're losing eyeballs, and people will just walk away, and they're going to realize that they're going to have to find other ways of raising their money. Because just like, I mean, Tyler, you can understand this, just like when people put out albums, maybe 3 songs out of an album would be something that was worthwhile or something that they would actually market and promote. The other maybe 7 or 8 songs were just fillers, not necessarily all great songs. And that's when the whole singles market in the music industry took over and became so big. So, I mean, I think it's the same thing. They're going to have to come up with a new way because, I'm the average Joe. I'm the average person, and the average person's not going to care. And this stuff doesn't mean something. It didn't strike anything special to me as someone that's going to say, okay, this is something that I'd like to pay a monthly, $3 even for, $5, whatever.
One other feature that everybody's been asking for is the ability to edit old tweets. I want to edit a tweet that, I made a typo or something like that. I don't want to delete it. I just want to edit it. Why not?
Yeah, I agree with that because that works very fine with Facebook, and it gives you the history, so you can see if somebody added it. Because sometimes we afraid that if somebody posts something and then change it totally later. So if you have the history with the editing, that would perfectly to if you have the typo. I think that's the easiest way to fix.
I find Clubhouse tweeting, Clubhouse messaging the same thing. I find it, I don't know, maybe I haven't found out how to do it, but yeah, the editing functionality is not there. So I sometimes see it, like Tyler said, usually I read it after I sent it, and then I'm like, oh, shoot, I need to fix it. But then there's no way to do that, except you can delete it or something like that. So it would be easy to
Clubhouse messaging is crap. You can't search. You can only archive. That's it. You can't even delete. It's horrible, and it is extremely slow. If you have a lot of people on your back channel, it is so slow. You will go in a black hole every time you go there. It'll take you like a minute to come back. Especially people will be talking to you. You're trying to get back to the room. Oh, and if you go back, you lose everything that you were typing. Like maybe you'll be writing a long message or something. You'll lose all of that. It is just. I think it's just the first step. I hope they improve it. Replays is fantastic. It's one of the best features I've seen in Clubhouse so far. But messaging is horrible. It is
Summer,
agree.
by far
I
the
actually thought
most.
Clubhouse messaging was so bad that I actually overthought it. I thought maybe there's something that they're doing that I'm not making. It doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I'm not figuring this out. I'm figuring there's a reason behind it being, as limited as it is.
Actually, something else about the messaging is that if you're not careful when you're replying to a request and you're editing your message, oftentimes you're ending up blocking that person. And this has happened quite a few times. I think that somehow
Worse, you end up
the
in the room
tab
with
of the
them.
blocking is so close to the editing, to the backspace or whatever that place. So it's really, don't tell me I found out. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. And also, one has got so used to being able to reply directly to a message in a thread like that. So I agree, it doesn't work well. And sometimes I miss having that one can't back channel while we are focusing on the talking. because the audio, of course, is amazing.
Yeah, so one of the other features is sometimes your send button or whatever it is gets sticky and you end up inviting a guy to or someone you don't know to like a wave session and like a private room. And look how embarrassing that is because now it gets stuck. It's on the top until someone acknowledges it and you can't even cancel it. You can't even get out of it. It's like you're stuck there. The same button that you send the text is opens another private room with you. So that feature really needs an overhaul. I don't know what they need to do with it, but
well,
it
then if you're
is
stuck, just go ahead and have a conversation with that guy in a private room. Maybe you
much
could
be
learn
easier.
something.
Might be easier, but
We're gonna
it's not
next
going to work
article.
if he's the. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. So the New York Times says that Meta, formerly known as Facebook, aims to remove ad targeting options based on user interactions with content about health, race, political affiliation, religion, and more by January 19th. The social media company formerly known as Facebook said Tuesday that it planned to eliminate advertisers' abilities. Hold on. The company. Sorry, here we go. They eliminate advertisers' abilities to target people with promotions based on their interactions with content related to health, race, ethnicity, political affiliation, religion, sexual orientation, and thousands of other topics.
It should never have been a thing in the first place.
The move, which takes effect on January 19, affects advertisers on Meta's apps such as Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger, and the company's audience network, which places ads in third-party apps. So a lot of people don't know this, who might be listening, which is if you have an app, let's say a dating app, and you want to make money in your dating app, let's say it's a free dating app. Well, if it's a free app, then it means you need to monetize most obviously by running ads. Or you're a website, you're the New York Times, and you want to make money, and you're not charging subscriptions, and you need to run ads. The question is, you don't want to get into the business of selling the ads on your site. There's plenty of other people doing that already, like Facebook. So you could go to Facebook and say, hey, Facebook, I have this extra space on my page. Can I put some ads there and get paid money when people see them or click them? And Facebook can say, yeah, sure. Here you go. Boom. So that happens. That Facebook's ads get seen even far beyond Facebook is sort of the point I'm trying to make here. Inside other apps who want to make money in their apps. So Facebook said it was making the changes to limit the way that its targeting tools can be abused. In the past, these features have been used to discriminate against people or to spam them with unwanted messaging. Here's a quote. We've heard concerns from experts that targeting options like these could be used in ways that lead to negative experiences for people in underrepresented groups. Facebook relies on targeted advertising for the bulk of its $86 billion in annual revenue. Yep. So this is, unlike Apple, who doesn't want to give up their juicy, gravy train of money in their app store, 30%. Facebook's big gravy train of money is this ad network, and here they are, cannibalizing, carving out, something that is clearly very valuable to their ad network.
Tyler, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Something is fishy about this.
Something fishy? Yeah. Why? This is uncharacteristic of Facebook, I think is what you're thinking, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is unusual. What are they thinking? Is there something else that they're trying to hide from us?
Yeah, it's just if it was Google, it would seem a little more plausible. Yeah, I can see Google doing this. Facebook, this is uncharacteristic. Facebook doesn't normally do this. Facebook's known these were bad. As to Carl's point, Facebook knows that, this statement that they make of how this can be abused. Yeah, you've known that for a very long time, and you had no problem with that. So why are you fixing this now? And are you really fixing it? Because to I think is it Sam who made the previous comment? Recently Facebook also very similarly decided, oh, we're going to wind down our facial recognition system. Right? And that was the headlines. Facebook's winding down their Facebook recognition system. And then you read their own post and you look very closely as a geek and you realize, oh, you're not really winding that down. You're just winding down the part that sounds like you're winding it down, and you're head faking everybody into believing you're winding it down. And in reality, you're not. And that's why I think Sam has a point here. Is Facebook last week gave a head fake that they're self-inflicting a wound, financial wound on themselves, and we have to look at this in a similar light. Like, are you are you really doing this? Because this doesn't seem like the Facebook that we know. So the skepticism is well placed because they knew it was bad. They've known it's been bad for a very long time. So yeah.
Isn't that amazing how we already have a preconception about Facebook, right? Even if they are doing the right thing,
right.
Nobody trusts them.
Correct.
Because of their reputation. It's amazing.
It is. And this is what I want to bring up. And I actually had this conversation with Ellen in person 24 hours ago here in Stockholm as we're walking through this central Stockholm. She says incorrectly, and hopefully she's in the room and can confirm what I'm about to say. She says, sometimes she thinks I go a little easy on big tech. And I do. And my response was, I only defend Facebook when they're being accused of something unfairly. If there's plenty of things to accuse them of fairly. Plenty. This is one of them. This is the kind of, hey, New York Times, I normally criticize you for making fake, drummed up, misinformed accusations against Facebook, which, by God, you've been doing a lot of that lately. But on this one, this is right. You're reporting what they're saying. Hopefully Facebook's right. But we don't know because, as Messi says, as everyone in this room knows, Facebook has a long way to go to start earning any kind of trust back because they've got a rather rich history of head faking people and claiming they're going to do one thing over time. I mean, we're going back a decade even in on this point where they said, build up your following and bring in all your friends and, bring in your business and get all your followers. And then, we're going to charge you to reach all of those followers now. What? You didn't, what the hell are you doing? That's a classic example. And they've done many such things over the years. This kind of giving false impressions and tricking people into certain things. They've got a rather rich history of that, more than most. I would say more than anyone. So I am no fan, and I don't have a default posture of defending Facebook. By God, we could go on for hours about the egregious kind of unscrupulous kind of behaviors, and hence we have to, when we read something like this, take it with a car-sized grain of salt, because even last week when they said they're winding down the facial recognition, if you look closely and you with any degree of discernment, you realize, no, this is a head fake. And so again, we look at this with a huge degree of skepticism, because it's not been clearly demonstrated yet that they're actually genuinely willing to sacrifice revenue for willingly, without being forced to. So we'll see how this shakes out. I hope it's
benevolent reason.
Right. But hey, you know what? Prove me wrong, Facebook. We would all be very happy for you to prove us very wrong on this. And if you do, we will recognize it. We will applaud you. But please forgive our, collaborative skepticism. I'm speaking of the people of planet Earth when I say we here. So next, yes.
They mentioned Facebook, Instagram, and Snap. What about Maybe they're moving their advertising into the 3D world.
That's a great point, Fran. What if it turns out that Facebook's, they've said their whole future is the metaverse. Does this apply to the metaverse as well? Or is it, now, because Fran brings up a more interesting point than it might first appear, because on the devices where in the Instagram smartphone app, in the Facebook smartphone apps, in Facebook smartphone apps, they are having a lot of their data kind of taken away from them by Apple and Google. In the metaverse, they have their own hardware, their own device, which is the Oculus headset. No one can take that away from them, the data that's generated from that. So it might be they're going to be able to build a much more robust, ecosystem that's not dependent on Apple or Google's data in the metaverse. And they're an ad-based company after all. And now they're going to be a device and ad-based, kind of like Apple. Anyway, so it's a really interesting point, Fran. Yes, go ahead.
Tyler?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting statement you're making because you're talking about Facebook and sort of what they're doing in advertising space and advertising / metaverse, right?
Yeah.
But we're also...
By the way, I'll be back in 4 minutes. Please go ahead.
There's also, it's just a very quick correlation or connection is that when you look at what Elon Musk is doing with his rockets, there is also some rabbit hole research I've done that has found 5 Greek projects, five Greek tokenized projects that relate to all of the elements of color, ad, and a number of 3 other things that actually are, if you put all those together and you do deeper research, you'll recognize that what he's actually doing is trying to also connect the elements to do advertisement in space. And it's super fascinating, but you really have to go deep into the research, similar to what you do, Tyler. You really have to go into the about 3 or 4 layers deep, and you will find it. And it's super, super wild because this is something that I'd mentioned, 3-4 months ago, geometric space in Canada. And it's fascinating because the same way it seems like people are also lobbying, these big companies are lobbying to see who is going to have the opportunity to have the best ad space or be able to bring people into that experience first. Because the person who stakes that ground first, especially with advertising and marketing and sales and just getting people's eyes, start to see that where are they going to get people's eyes. And there's only certain locations going forward into the future where we're going to be able to advertise and get people's eyes. And Facebook has definitely recognized that the metaverse is one of them. But this is also what you're seeing with the gamers as well in AR. You're seeing that the person who comes and brings all those connections together first, in my opinion, is the one who probably puts a stake in the ground of the flag for first runner.
Tyler, you back? Okay, if he's not back, I'll move on to the next article. I've already pinned it on top. Apple backs off of breaking Face ID after DIY iPhone 13 screen replacement. Oh, I can imagine
Cheryl,
Chris comment now.
You have to play some cheering here because this
I
is
know.
fantastic. Finally, Apple backing off. This is the second time this week that they back off from something. In the iMac, they brought back the ports, and now they're allowing people to DIY their phones.
Okay.
What's going on?
Okay, let me continue reading first. A software update is on the way that won't require repair shops to transfer a microcontroller. So soon after the iPhone 13 launch, repair experts found that swapping out iPhone 13 screens would break the Face ID unless you also move over a tiny control chip from the original screen. So it's a complex process that makes one of the most common types of repairs prohibitively difficult for independent repair shops. So Apple authorized repair shops, on the other hand, have access to a software tool that can make a phone accept a new screen. And for indie repair shops, things may get easier soon. So however, as Apple tells The Verge, it will release a software update that doesn't require you to transfer the microcontroller to keep the Face ID working after a screen swap. Okay, that's apparently better news, right? Who has any reaction on that?
That is
Yeah.
great news. And it's like, why? I think nobody knows why they were penalizing people for fixing their screens. I mean, they're not swapping out the camera or anything. They're not meddling with anything in the hardware other than a broken screen. So why were they penalizing people? That's not fair. But I am happy that they reversed on that. And I'm happy to see that Apple is starting to listen to people. First, they brought back the ports in the iMac. Woohoo. And now they're coming back with things like this. I am liking this Apple that listens to people. I like that.
Well,
Yeah,
and I think it
this.
makes it more inclusive because I think that we still only have two Apple stores in all of Thailand. So when you think about markets outside of the US and, you know, certain European countries, perhaps, we just don't have access to the Apple store or, to be able to go in and actually have it repaired by Apple. So I think it's the right move. I completely agree.
Yes, Carl.
Cheers, Cheryl. Completely agree with, I think it was Sam's point. Yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. It's excellent. It's brilliant. It was a weird decision in the first place, but not so much when you take a look at sort of the economics of it and whatnot. It's a $10-15 billion repair industry in the US. If they do things like this, if they increase the friction, they increase the workload on the engineer, it pushes prices up. So that means that people are going to these repair shops to get their phones repaired cheaply, but it's pushing the prices up because there's more work involved in actually transferring the screen. Okay, so I suspect there was a little bit of tactical play here originally on Apple's part, because then either prices go up or they have to start sourcing parts cheaper to try and keep the prices the same. Okay, so there's that. The other thing is, it just shows that we're in this situation where you have such a huge company that can, with a software update, can like hold an entire industry in its hands. Do you know what I mean? Like they can switch us on, they can switch it back off again, and the entire repair industry is just beholden to whatever decision they
At
make
their
with these hot
mercy.
fixes. Yeah. So it's just it's crazy that we're in this situation at all. And just finally on the argument, we've mentioned it before, but some people might not know. There is an argument to be had with the Face ID and with the restrictions that they had on the infrared sensors, in that if you allow people to change them outside of an actual Apple store, there's a possibility that they could mess with the chips and actually compromise the security of the Face ID process itself. I don't know how viable that is, but that's always an argument that's given. Not by Apple, interestingly. They gave no response whatsoever when asked by a huge amount of right to repair advocates why they had made this decision with this version of the iPhone. They gave no feedback, nothing whatsoever. They just said nope. So they give no explanation as to why they did it. They just did it, and then immediately affected a multi-billion-dollar repair industry. So again, communication needs to be better, explanations need to be better, and I don't know. It would be nice if we're not in this situation where Apple has this much power over a sector.
Great. Looks like we have some good news from the big tech. Okay, Tyler, back to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's a really interesting move. The next one's from Axios. Headline says, bipartisan House bill in the U.S. would force tech platforms to offer an input transparent algorithm that doesn't require user data to generate recommendations. Meaning, an input transparent algorithm, basically the easiest way to do that is a chronological or reverse chronological feed. In example, Twitter and Facebook, both of which allow that. They could make it easier, and if this passes, they might have to. And if they make it any more complicated than chronological, say it's chronological plus some degree of based on your who you most engage with, then they're going to need to make that transparent in the algorithm. They're going to have to say this algorithm that generates this feed is chronological plus some influence of your favorite, people that you follow or the people that you most engage with. So, by the way, Jack Dorsey, of all people, understands that he doesn't want to be in this game And he knows this game's about to get really crazy, that these politicians want to blame them, that these algorithms that are not chronological are what's really to blame for what people see. You're controlling what people see. Where if it was chronological, you're not controlling what people see. They're controlling what they see. And they are to blame if they go storm the Capitol. Because you didn't influence what they see. They controlled completely what they see. You had no influence. You're just a conduit. They want to follow a bunch of people. They follow a bunch of people. They get to see all of the tweets coming in chronologically. They're following bad people. That's on them. But the fact that you are meddling with what they see and don't see, now you're influencing potentially their behavior. And if they storm the Capitol, now you get headlines like yesterday from the New York Times that Facebook is stoking the civil war in Ethiopia. Well, remove the algorithms. And then you can say, well, you have nobody to blame but yourself. Stop following idiots on our platform. Stop saying stupid stuff on our platform. So Jack Dorsey has a move behind the scenes here that he's not really been very transparent about, that is working on, which is the idea that anyone that they want to enable an app store of algorithms, so that the New York Times could make their own algorithm of the content that you see in Twitter. That anybody could make your Aunt Betty could have her own algorithm where you will specifically see chronological, but things related to your family. Your family members' stuff will be much more highlighted in your feed, for example. And you could have countless, literally millions of different algorithms, and anyone could make algorithms. And now you chose which algorithm you're using. Hence, we're not choosing what you're seeing. You are choosing. You're empowered to what you're seeing. Leave us out of this nonsense. So back to the article that the House and both sides of the House, bipartisan House bill, will force tech platforms to offer input transparent algorithm that doesn't require user data to generate recommendations. Well, if it doesn't require user data at all, then that algorithm is almost certainly going to be chronological or reverse chronological or based on trends, which is non-user data. So it's kind of weird. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of people tweeting about this, obviously. Someone named Adam Kovacevic, who's the CEO and founder of Chambers of Progress, a Democrat focused on tech progressive futures, says, where to begin breaking down this very bad idea? Number one, if you want reverse chronological feed, Twitter and Facebook already offer this. Yep. And here's how to do it. And he links to that. Number two, beyond that, the bill inserts the federal government into the design and editorial judgments of Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, a pretty obvious unconstitutional violation of platforms' First Amendment rights to rank content however they want. It's not, yeah, but it's more to do with like the safe harbor clauses and the Section 230. For more on why targeting algorithm amplification is just unconstitutional speech regulation by another name, check out this paper that he links to, and I will tweet this to the Twitter account so you can see this whole tweet thread. And the vast majority of people want platforms to moderate and rank content to prioritize healthy content and deprioritize junk, which I think we would all agree with that. For the small percent of people who want moderation-free social media, let me introduce them to Getter, Gab, Parler, and 4chan. Great point. Fantastic. Brilliantly made point. There are moderation-free social media platforms out there. You're not going to like them. They suck. They are filled with vitriol and hate. You think Facebook has a hate speech problem? Oh boy, you've seen nothing yet. Oh boy. Oh boy. Holy shitstorm, Batman. Well, just wait till you see what an unfiltered, moderation-free social media platform looks like. You think is your feed currently filled with Nazi hate speech? Oh, it's not? Oh, it's probably because it's moderated. You want an unmoderated social media platform? Get ready. Holy smokies.
Yeah, it can get pretty nasty out there. It can get pretty nasty.
It gets very nasty very quickly. And this was the whole thing with Parler, where Parler's like, and look at, this is another interesting lens from which to look at this conversation, because Parler, which is a lot of folks from the right side of the aisle in the US who feel they're being silenced on social media like Twitter and Facebook. So they made their own app. Well, it turns out you have to do a lot more than make your own app. You have to make your own cloud infrastructure, because Amazon won't even host your app. So they're using some Russian cloud, as I understand it. And next thing you know, ISIS is in there making all kinds of crazy posts, and it just gets wild. It becomes the Wild West very quickly. Number 4, algorithms are also what protect users from scammers, spammers, and hate speech. So what the politicians are doing here is requiring Facebook, Twitter, YouTube to offer a more hate and scam-filled version of their services. Read the bill closely, and it acknowledges this uncomfortable truth. Example, this bill says algorithmic ranking can affect user-specific data, except for the purposes of protecting kids from adult content. So you can use user data by even looking at their age and then specifically removing content. So algorithms are bad, kid protecting algorithms are good. Right, gotcha. Okay. So even you realize that these algorithms are actually doing something very important and useful. The bill attacks opaque algorithms as bad, but all algorithms are just math and aren't disclosed because scammers and spammers would game them. Adam, the dude who wrote this thread, boom, applause. Again, another fantastically made point that rarely gets made, which is if the algorithm is transparent and people get to see what's influencing it, you're going to have people, very smart people, very, very, very crafty geeks, intentionally gaming that algorithm to their benefit.
So they're trying to game it as it is. It's just done,
opaquely, right?
Through blind trial and error.
Right.
But the thing is, there's a further, the notion of like algorithms being doled out by whoever has apps. There's a more insidious thing, because you can have somebody, who's interested in disinfo warfare of some sort or other. They can produce a nice popular algorithm that behaves really nicely, and at the crucial moment update it.
I hope you can hear. Sorry, I'm going to jump in. Apologies. I hope you can hear me okay. But
yeah,
my interesting analysis of this, or angle that I'd like to analyze, is who are the sponsors behind these politicians? What angle is it coming from? Is this a Trump-sponsored thing? And then there's that one line you mentioned the other night, Tyler, in the infrastructure bill. What is the money behind these laws?
Somebody actually DM'd me on specifically that issue, saying, "Here's the funders of the politicians behind this bill."
If it's a bipartisan bill, it can't be Trump support. It's not right. Trump sponsored, so that's number one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's giving an example. I don't think he believes it was Trump related, but he just, as an example, like, he raises a good question, which is, let's try and figure out what their real motive is in doing this.
There's 535 members of Congress, and there's been so much publicity about algorithms. It's not unexpected that some small percentage, of those 535 would say, "Oh, this looks like a public interest bill to do something about algorithms, because we've been reading in the New York Times and all these other publications that algorithms are bad." And so they sponsor a bill. I mean, I don't, because they think it's going to help their political career, like they did something for the public. I don't necessarily think there's money behind it. I just think you have to realize there's 535 members, so you get 10 of them, to sponsor a bill, and all of a sudden it's a bipartisan bill. Doesn't mean it's going anywhere,
Yeah.
I mean, it could be because of the recent news with Francis Haugen's.
So maybe in this example, you're right, Ken, about that. But on the infrastructure side, when this guy born in 1934 in Alabama puts in a one line in this huge infrastructure bill that says, Yeah, you got to identify somebody who sent you a virtual good. I think there's money behind that one.
That was actually put in the bill at the request of the Secretary of the Treasury. Okay, never mind which member that technically sponsored it. That was the United States Treasury Department and Janet Yellen, our Treasury Secretary, who wanted it in the bill. She's she's anti crypto basically, and they're concerned about tax evasion. They're concerned about a lot of things with crypto. So that was actually the administration that did that.
Has she said anything about CBDC?
I don't think so. You're talking about the
central bank digital currencies.
No, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think she said anything.
They don't want to talk about the central bank digital currencies because they're on the go slow path. Like there was a headline out today, Bank of England not going to happen until 2025, and even then, it's on the, it'll be delayed. I think you're right, Ken. Like the Yellen and here in the UK, Andrew Bailey, the governor of the Bank of England, like they basically hate crypto and they hate the fact that their equivalent is on the go slow.
So the next article is from the Washington Post that Meta shares bullying and harassment numbers for the first time, claims the category represents 0.1% of Facebook content and 0.05% of Instagram content. The social media giant published several transparency reports on Tuesday. Facebook published a series of reports on Tuesday. Now, that's interesting. This is obviously unprecedented. This is kind of the first of its kind where Facebook is publicly sharing, and make no mistake, this is an after effect of the fact that a whistleblower came in and found stuff and shared it. Now Facebook is like, you know what? Fuck that. You're trying to make us look bad because you're the ones that found it, and you're trying to completely twist and distort the findings that we had in our studies. So we're going to announce them ourselves going forward publicly, and perhaps again with our well-earned skepticism of the company, maybe they're intentionally doing a bit of cherry picking and narrative crafting in this process, and but this could be an interesting development. But I suspect they're not going to, that they get to be in more control of the narratives, and there can be less kind of monkey business about how those narratives are twisted, because now the source is Facebook itself. Here's a new report about harassment on our apps, and good luck tweaking and twisting it when we're the official source. So the social media giant published several transparency reports on Tuesday, and what this does is it completely nullifies the boogeyman that the whistleblower is trying to create. The whistleblower was trying to say Facebook has all this, stuff, and they know everything's bad, and they're not releasing it, and they will never change, and da-da-da. And then Facebook comes out and is like, oh, here's a transparency report about bullying. Oh, we're going to keep sending these out henceforth. We have a whole new policy now. We're just, every time we find interesting stuff, we're going to announce it publicly. And now you don't even need to listen to the whistleblower. We're our own whistleblower. And then the question is this like the abusive person in the relationship, coming out and sharing their version of, events henceforward, so you don't need to listen to, that could be up for debate. But I think it's a very incredibly clever, as I said from the beginning, Facebook has, as we know very personally, Michelle, who joins us nearly every day on this stage, works in this team in Facebook, and she's brilliant. Say what you want about Facebook as a company, Michelle's freaking brilliant. It doesn't matter how you feel about Facebook. Everybody on the stage would agree that Michelle, who joins us from Facebook, is obviously totally capable, smart individual. And we look forward to all of her comments every day without exception. And you have to understand, she's not unique at Facebook. They are filled with totally brilliant people in these teams. So this move that is coming out today about, hey, we're going to whistleblow on ourselves. Here's a study we just found about bullying on our platforms. Well, normally you would try and hide something like that. You want to pretend that no bullying exists. Well, if we've got leakers in our company who's going to leak everything anyways, at least we get to be the source and make the statements. And when we publish the material, it includes our comments preemptively so that it can't be distorted, or not as easily distorted, because then they have to intentionally, knowingly not include our comments and context about understanding what this data is all about. I think it's brilliant, and I think it makes sense. I think that's a really smart move, and I somewhat predicted Facebook needs to get out in front of this whole mess, and it seems like they might have found a totally brilliant strategy for doing this.
Tyler. So I was going to comment earlier to the other 2 points, and to your point, and sorry everyone, it's just my opinion. There's a pattern emerging, and so we're in tech news around the world like Chris used to do, and we need to analyze it from the technical aspect versus the political aspect versus the, politics, etc. Yeah. So from a technical aspect, you talked about earlier sequential databases or timestamps. And if that were to occur, you said it right earlier, like you could just see everything on right-wing media. What's really, in my opinion, being designed, and I'm part of it, I get it, it is what it is you're looking at a landscape, and I want to say it publicly, of what's going to occur in the metaverse. And people can poo-poo one way or the other. I don't care what you think about the metaverse. Wall Street analysts, the biggest investment banks, are moving quickly in it because they know what's coming. And it's something you talked about a long time ago, Pilot, about 6 months ago, 8 months ago with Cal. Like, you used to say Instagram and you'll be able to wear some AR, VR and purchase whatever. It's going to go way beyond that with supply chain and everything else. And they're trying to lay the foundational landscapes, and these countries are doing that. And to Dave's point, which I do agree with, are crypto governments saying we won't do it till 2025. I'm going to say it again. It will be within 1 year. You're just going to see a quick adoption of a lot of things. It may be more silent, but they would have implemented it by next year, within 8 months, because they have to move. Once Facebook did that publicly, and it turns into Meta as of December 1st as their ticker symbol on Wall Street. And so once that occurs, we are moving more in this environment, regardless of what we know is coming with AR, VR, or MR, mixed reality, glasses, wearables, etc. We're about to move in that space, and these governments need to lay that landscape, the Western governments and the financial systems very quickly. So that's what you're seeing. And, I've said it before, I've been in the crypto space since 2010, yet I own no Bitcoin. Now, maybe you know why. I've never owned it, but I'm deep into tech, and I'm just focused on AGI and tech. But you will see the emergence of what's coming, because you'll need to be able to, when you say space, you cannot trade, if there's transactions going forward, fintech is close to it, but it's transacting on a terrestrial banking system. It needs to be something that's beyond, the U.S., like if it were Mars, same thing, like if you're discovering NASA. And so, and my chairman is the former director of NASA. If you're doing something like that, the metaverse will encompass that. It can't be hacked by quantum or anything else. So we will see this, and you will see more articles, as you covered, Tyler, more articles cover this, and there'll be, a lot of pain going through it, but we will get there. I think that's where they're heading anyway, in my opinion. And you're just going to see a lot of left and right, dichotomy to figure out. But those who are smart or techie or who've been in this space for a long time will understand what's going on. And hopefully they just build tech for the greater good versus their own pockets. That's my little 2 cents.
Okay. So in this article from the Washington Post, it says that in sharing these numbers about bullying, Facebook is trying to show that harmful material does not dominate its platform. The company also points out that the most popular links and posts on Facebook, which include links to shopping and entertainment pages, as well as viral misinformation, at times constitutes roughly 1% of all content that U.S. users saw in their news feeds in the past quarter. But the reports are unlikely to placate the growing number of lawmakers around that world. I think you mean around the world, Washington Post, not around that world. Holy shit, what is wrong with journalism? There are tools to fix that auto-magically for you. Grammar correctors.
Also tools known as editors.
But
I didn't mean the other sense of tool.
I know what you mean. but the but the reports are unlikely to placate the growing number of lawmakers around that world who say that regulation of social media platforms is the only real antidote to problems such as hate speech, violent incitement, bullying, and political polarization caused by social media services. And indeed, the timing of this report from Facebook is obviously related to the fact that they're trying to talk about, having the government force the algorithms to be chronological. And then Facebook's saying, look, this what you think is a problem is not a problem. Here's data. And interesting that the Washington Post takes, which is not in the business of opinions. This is not an opinion piece. This is supposed to be news, and yet they throw in, but the reports are unlikely to placate the growing number of lawmakers around the world. How do you know that? You have psychic fucking abilities into how this article is going to influence politicians? By the way, if you have an expert who can say that, great, that's news. You're reporting a quote from somebody who has an expert opinion on that.
And even better if you can provide us some evidence and data to underline.
Right. But for you, Washington Post, you are not an opinion rag. You are the Washington Post. You are supposed to report news. You're supposed to report things. It's called journalism. Go get somebody who can get a quote and share a quote from somebody saying, I'm a politician. I think politicians are not going to fall for Facebook's attempts to do this, yada, 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 yada. So says some politician. Okay, great. Now I can read that, and I have a person who's an expert on that topic. Washington Post, you are not an expert to be injecting your own opinion into this. Stop doing that. That is not journalism. That is activism. Stop doing that, please. You are ruining one of the important institutions and pillars of democracy when you do this. Jesus. Some critics and experts...
And put your spell check on. Come on, let's lay it in thick this morning.
Anyway, it's incredibly important to call them out when they do shit like this, because it's degrading, one of the pillars of democratic process in society, which is journalism, which is crucial, which is important.
Tyler, let me ask a question. Was that a news article, or was that they have columnists to do write opinions?
Yes, this is new. This is a news article.
News article?
Anyway. Oh, and by the way, it's the same young lady who... Ken, it's the same lady who wrote the article about Israel's facial recognition. Elizabeth Dwoskin. Oh, Jesus.
The one who's got form, Tyler, in a number of articles that all line up on one topic.
Yeah. Yes.
Need to find out if she actually got a degree in journalism.
Correct. At this point, that's worth a worthy question.
Well, Eli, she probably didn't.
Anyway,
invite her to Clubhouse.
I think I looked it up. The other day. She may have got to Columbia. So what's her name again? I'll look it up.
Elizabeth Dwoskin. Dwoskin.
I'll look it up.
Thank you. Elizabeth with a Z. Thank you, Ken. So the next article is...
Tyler, just quickly on LS's previous point. I think it was a really interesting thread that you brought out, LS, in terms of the metaverse and the underlying payment structure. Social commerce goes gangbusters, and you need some digital payment globally. What do you guys think in terms of this whole LS's point of massive acceleration of the central bank stuff to enable the metaverse? Have you thought much into that?
And Dave, thanks. Maybe we can save this when Tyler gets through the news thread, because sometimes I don't like to bring these points up. No, I'm LS. This is me speaking. I'm just saying you're right, because Tyler wants to get through the thread, and I'm always here to learn and contribute. But the perspective is deeper, and I think we're heading to that. And I'm sorry, guys. I'm still just dealing with the Chris thing. And I was supposed to meet Chris. And so I'm still dealing with that personally. So
Yeah, I think we all are actually.
Me too.
yeah, but I was going to meet him physically. I know, Tyler. I mean physically because he's only like 3 hours away from here too. Well, 2
LS,
hours over now.
we're sending you a big virtual hug, man. Big
Thank
virtual
you.
hug.
But
Do
you
you
know
receive
what?
it? Do you
Now
receive
Tyler
it?
knows it's normally from Orange County to San Fernando. It should be only an hour, but it's usually 3 hours because you're just in traffic forever. But we were planning to do something, and so I just need to figure out, continue what I'm doing. But I'm sorry if I'm off, my center
Yeah,
because I'm just trying to.
we
I
all are,
got you,
man.
Tyler. But yeah. So that being said, and thank you, Cheryl, for that tribute. But that being said, I think we could just do this later and continue to. And thank you, Tyler, and everyone in the room for what we do to continue to build a better world. Because it doesn't matter. I will never stop doing what I'm doing while I walk the earth, and they already know this. So no, it just won't stop. And so we can analyze, we think, we figure it out, we build a better world, and we fucking can do this collectively. We're not, stupid people who just listen and walk away and do whatever. And we have the tools and the resources to do it. And it threatens an old system. And I know that old system extremely well. But it needs to just move on, in my opinion. That's all.
Thank you, LS. So
Yeah,
the
so
next,
Tyler,
yeah,
again, Dr. Fran just sent me something, and I had just looked it up at LinkedIn too, but I saw yesterday. This reporter actually has a master's degree, MS degree in journalism from Columbia. So
amen.
that's very real journalism
Very,
school.
very as good as it gets.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that. If she's working with one of the top publications on the planet, I would expect nothing less. I would love to engage in a conversation about. She knows the genre. Please help us understand. That would be my request. So anyway, the next one is that Meta, aka Facebook, says it can't keep up with its own oversight board, which has issued 78 recommendations since January, and that the 30-day response deadline is too tight. So I guess Facebook has a 30-day window in which to respond to the oversight board, who has made 78 recommendations this year, so nearly 2 a week. And depending on who you ask, Facebook's oversight board is either a massive PR stunt to deflect blame away from the company, or or an ambitious and thoughtful experiment in social media governance. Whatever it is, it's apparently becoming untenable for Facebook. I love that first paragraph.
Facebook is so thoughtful. Yes.
Yeah, but
It's a trend these days.
What a thoughtful way to cover both sides. It says depending on who you ask, it's one thing or the other. You're right, and if you asked me, I'm even torn myself. I'm kind of at some days I think it's one side, and other days I think it's the other.
Well, I think most people, Tyler, would agree that it is better that it exists and doesn't exist if you stay there. Yeah.
Yeah, in a report published Tuesday, Facebook said it's struggling to keep up with the pace of recommendations being dished out by the board, and that it needs to come up with a better way to communicate with the board that doesn't entail writing dueling multi-page missives. Quote, "We believe the current design of the recommendation process may not be the best way to bring about the long-term structural changes the board is pushing us to undertake."
They need some broad scale automation, AI, some algorithms, some GPT-3 all hooked together so it just flows.
The board has issued 78
what
recommendations.
Could possibly go wrong?
Right. Under its agreement with the board, Facebook is supposed to respond to each of those recommendations, which are non-binding, within 30 days, but Facebook hasn't made substantive progress on lots of those recommendations, in part because the company said that 30-day deadline is too tight. Quote, "On average, our teams assess and respond to anywhere from 5 to 35 recommendations at any one point in time," the report reads. "The majority of these recommendations require over a dozen people to assess feasibility, which we cannot easily complete in 30 days. Facebook's current product road mapping approach involves quantitative and qualitative analysis and requires making trade-offs and prioritization among multiple competing initiatives." the report said, but that process only happens every 6 months, meaning some of the board's recommendations are currently being considered on a slower timeline. Out of the 69 recommendations the board made during the past 2 quarters, Facebook has fully implemented just 12 of them. Another 23 recommendations are in progress, and the company is still assessing the feasibility of 17 recommendations.
It's clear that it's not a priority. This is the thing. Yes, they are taking them under consideration, but they're not a priority. Therefore, they will take their sweet time and they will, the justification is, it's too tight. It's just 1 month. Give us 3, 4 months to do it. And well, this is Facebook. They can hire people to just specifically, study this and figure it out. I would give it, honestly, I would give them the benefit of the doubt. I'd say maybe 1 month is too tight. Give them like a quarter at least to take those recommendations at least.
Well, I mean, if the board, if the members of that board, if they're all selected, hired, and fired by Facebook itself, then perhaps it's at the most a branch within the Facebook to evaluate. It's almost like another set of higher level of the sort of the reviewers, if you will, unless there's some neutral mechanism of appointing members that could actually adjudicate. The nature of the adjudication of this board is really questionable, and that actually is going to be a bigger issue because there are really no other recourse for people who are banned from the platform. It's essentially, Facebook's decision, of course, but it's done by this particular board. So I think the real question is who are going to be the member of the board on that particular board, and whether the decision has any sort of real
If it's
judicial,
binding.
yeah, judicial, well, even judicial flavor, if you will.
Facebook's traditional mantra was move fast and break things. Somebody sent out a tweet saying move slow and construct memos.
One more thing. If this takes so long to fix afterwards, maybe these guys needs to be engaged in the process, like their software development lifecycle early. Engage them very early in the design stages, take their considerations into account, and put the justifications in writing. So later on, something happens, you go back to why did we make this decision in the first place, and how can we change it? So just bake this into your process. Make sure that future projects are like that, and then retroactively start working on your existing items. Uh, if
And
it's too much
annotate
work
the
now,
source code.
exactly, annotate and make sure that everything can be traced back to where this decision was made and why did you make this decision in the first place.
Okay,
This
so
all helps.
I want to get into the next one here. Coinbase just had their Q3 revenues of 1.3 billion, but monthly transacting users fell. That's not good. So when their monthly usership went from 8.8 million down to 7.4 million, so now the stock is down 10% on Coinbase, reporting weaker than expected revenue for the third quarter. That's not
I was
good.
surprised by that, Tyler, because it doesn't really follow the trend of everyone hopping on the ski slope of Bitcoin at the moment. It was a weird one.
Well, I think the problem is in the old days, it was difficult to make a company like Coinbase. Still is relatively. It's gotten a lot easier. So you have hundreds of places where you can transact with Bitcoins and NFTs and all of these things. Coinbase is not the end-all be-all one-stop shop for everything, which normally 10, 20, 30 years ago, there was so much friction in making a massive, IPO like company that you would generally soak up the entire market. And now they're not market dominant. They've got, this just so many different competitors and so many different aspects
Yeah,
of the crypto space.
they were one of the first ones that like applied to be regulated and were a regulated broker. But now you have other regulated brokers getting into crypto like Robinhood, so that's probably part of it. And
Yep.
also they just hacked recently, and I wouldn't be necessarily surprised that some people decided they wanted to go from a hot wallet to a cold wallet, and
Right.
that could those numbers too.
By the way, the Robinhood didn't
Also,
report. They kind of dropped as after their report as well.
well, maybe the whole market, that segment of the market had beating. That's why it went down because of the revenue news or their I don't know, number of subscribers or whatever. That market is fragile. It is as fragile and as volatile as the NFTs and currencies that they are carrying. So, I
And
guess
also
it might
remember,
come with
Coinbase.
the territory.
I should have just thought of it. Also, I mean, they're basically transactional, so their revenues go up and down based on number of transactions. Just because the price of Bitcoin or Ethereum is going up, doesn't mean that there's like a net more transactions. Because if a lot of people are not selling, and there's a lot of people chasing the fewer offers that are out there, particularly on something that supposedly there's a fixed supply on, particularly like Bitcoin, that there's supposedly a fixed supply. It's going to drive the price up, but there's not going to necessarily be more transactions. I mean, one thing that a lot of people don't speak about is what's the concentration of ownership, in some of this stuff. So you could have a situation where the price goes up, but there's actually less transactions, just like you could have in homes, in single family homes, that prices go up even though there's less transactions, because the inventory that's available is just small.
Okay. Next up, Aaron might have a comment on this one. Jumo, a fintech helping entrepreneurs of small and medium businesses in emerging markets gain access to loans, raises 120 million, led by Fidelity at a reported 400 million valuation. So they are a South Africa and London-based company that offers financial services to entrepreneurs and businesses in emerging markets to get easier access to loans. Again, competing with banks on one of their primary things, which is loans to SMBs. So here we go yet again. Another paper cut in the traditional banking for the traditional banks. And Aaron, being at Fidelity, might have a comment.
Yeah, Tyler, just this is our first investment from an FMR perspective. We have different arms at Fidelity, different VC arms, Eight Roads, Devonshire, FISV, etc. But this is from the core company, US based, and it shows the growth in Africa fintech, as many of us have already known about it. You'll see Stripe have made a few investments in this space as well. So yeah, keep an eye on Africa fintech. And watch it grow.
For sure. Thanks for that. The next one, Wall Street Journal reporting that DoorDash does their Q3 report up 45% year over year. Now that's growth. And says it will acquire European food delivery company Volt from next door here in Helsinki by Mickey, who I'm quite fond of.
It's a Finnish.
Yes. And Volt, by the way, the biggest investor in Volt is my dearest friend Ted Pearson, if I understand correctly, EQT Ventures. And they're selling for an $8 billion deal. So Mickey is, congrats, man. I have to, I know Mickey because Mickey used to be the CEO of Slush, a company, one of the biggest tech conferences globally, who I partner with every year for the past several years when I do my big event here in Stockholm. And in fact, Slush is coming up December 1st and 2nd. I think Aaron and I might be joining together with a bunch of friends to head over there. And Mickey stepped down as CEO from Slush and then started Volt not that long ago. Gosh, I want to say 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. So to sell it for $8 billion, he's still relatively quite young. So huge congrats to Mickey. Huge congrats to EQT Ventures. an $8 billion turnaround in just a few years is just fantastic. Obviously accelerated by COVID, but what a night! Just couldn't be happier for them, honestly.
Not jealous at all, Tyler. Right? We're not jealous. Like
No, not even, no, not at all. I'm hoping he buys the island next door to me, actually. So, the next one is Vietnam-based online marketplace called Tiki raises $258 million and says it has 20 million registered users, and its grocery business grew 2,000% year over year. That's very serious growth. Vietnam-based e-commerce firm Tiki booming. Yep, Southeast Asia, as I've told you, because I'm there. That's where I live, and I'm telling you, 2 years ago, pre-COVID, no, was not by any means booming. Tech was not really happening, and I was telling my tech investor friends, not that interesting over here. And my God, did COVID COVID accelerated a lot of tech in a lot of places, perhaps nowhere more so than Southeast Asia. It just really, really transitioned everything from paper to digital, and from going to the shop to ordering everything, and e-commerce exploded, and fintech exploded in Southeast Asia during COVID. So there you go.
Tyler, quick
Yes.
question. Do you think that would have happened without the Chinese influx, that began in 2015 with the ASEAN Economic Community and all of the Chinese tourists that brought with them WeChat Pay and Alipay? Because I think about, to your point, Thailand was so far behind. They were still calling it e-commerce, just a few years back. But my sense is that businesses were forced to figure it out if they wanted some of this Chinese tourist money that was coming over. And then they were fast followers, to your point. Like, okay, so how can our banking systems adapt? Because we are tired of sending money back to China via Alipay and WeChat Pay. So let's use some of our national banks and get with this, new technology and make life simple and easy for people. And for the unbanked, you can use your mobile, right? So in the same way that people have been doing with WeChat Pay for years. So I completely agree. And I think that it's because of the Chinese presence, both, physically, but technologically in the space, that has really helped to accelerate it.
That was definitely one of the catalysts. The other was the concurrent rollout of ubiquitous, really fast, cheap internet. And my goodness, I'm here in Stockholm, Sweden, the birthplace of 3G, 4G, 5G, Bluetooth, SMS, and all of it, and has been usually a couple years ahead of everybody on all of those things. And yet Thailand has way faster smartphone connectivity, fiber connectivity, and way a tenth of the cost and 10 times as fast. So it plays a significant role in it as well, I have to imagine.
Yeah, Tyler, and they've made it really easy. Just very quickly, they made it very easy because a few years back, you'd have to go to 7-Eleven and buy what looked like a lottery scratch-off card in order to get a code to upgrade your internet. And all of this now you can do via your mobile. So, I think they've just made it seamless across industries, whether it's, internet telecommunications, banking, commerce, small business, startup processes. It really seems to be systemic.
Well, there's one, and I know Ben wants to jump in, but the other catalyst was Chinese Android smartphones driving down the cost, down to where you can get a decent smartphone for around $100, and that was kind of this interesting tipping point that took fire across Southeast Asia, I think. Ben?
Just jump in with the opposite end of that. You guys were talking about Thailand and Sweden, how fast the internet there is. Well, yesterday there was some light rain and storm in the Northern California. The whole area's internet went down, literally almost at the same time. from Marin County all the way south, probably even to Santa Cruz.
Wow.
And this is in the good old USA.
Right.
So there you go.
Yep.
And one other point to Ben and Lakeisha's point, Tyler, real quickly, is that there's no legacy systems technologically or infrastructure in the ground, and there's also no labor problems. So, unions and jobs, unfortunately or fortunately. So if you're talking about moving the world or the earth to a certain standpoint, you can just drop sats or certain things. And if you don't have to deal with unions and the more, it is what it is, I'm not for or against either way. But in the more Western worlds like Europe, like Stockholm or the US, you can bypass all that.
Okay.
If I can just add a couple words on that, if you look at what happened 20 years ago in China, in the countryside, they completely skipped the copper line. None of that landlines because they couldn't afford copper. So everybody went to this cell phone. Peasants or people who are peddling food on the street, may not even have any education, yet they had cell phone and they had mobile payment. And that's probably 10, 20 years ago. So what I'm thinking is, looking at sort of virgin territory, no pun intended, perhaps I would say Africa could be a great open field to really using technology to leapfrog, perhaps, everybody else. Anyway, that's just some thoughts.
Okay, next up is an Indian e-commerce company for beauty products called Nykaa rose 89% in its Indian market debut after raising $721 million in its IPO, gaining a valuation of $13 billion. So I guess they were already a unicorn. Congratulate them on joining the unicorn club. It's another booming Indian tech company. And here's a wild one. The next one says, Cheryl can pin it. Journalists and analysts talk of muted reactions to the Facebook papers. The Wall Street Journal's jihad, as I call it. And where they brought in, it's based on the Frances Haugen whistleblower, and the Wall Street Journal was, writing several headlines a day for many days and now into many weeks. And then the New York Times got involved and CNN and a group of 20 different publications all got involved. And now the journalists and analysts are talking of the muted reactions to the Facebook papers over Meta's failure to stop hate speech and misinformation in the global south. Very little of what I have read about the papers comes as a surprise. When news emerged, it's been very muted because it wasn't really news. You guys were trying to do your own January 6th storming of, some imaginary dumpster fire somewhere. And it was a whole bunch of bullshit. You guys had an agenda. You weren't doing journalism. There was no real news. You exposed yourselves. It's just a sadness. And now other publications are now calling you out. It was just so ridiculous. Yeah, of course the reaction was muted. There was nothing there. If there was, where's the punishment on Facebook? Normally when a whistleblower whistleblows something, this is worth contemplating. When a whistleblower means they were involved in something directly, some really shady shit, you're involved, in a murder, and you tell on, the person, you're a police, you're working at a corrupted police station, the police chief is doing all kinds of crazy shit, you go to the press, you let them know, the police chief gets arrested, he's in jail, you whistleblew. Working at Facebook of 60,000 people where everything is open, all 60,000 employees all get to see all the documents of all the other 60,000 employees all the time, in real time. They're not hiding anything. There's nothing to hide. They're fully transparent. Is that the behavior of a corrupt police station that needs to be whistleblowed on? And so Frances Haugen sucked up as many documents as she could from companies she doesn't work at, like Instagram, and tried to whistleblow about things she has no understanding of. This is like the donut shop next door to the police station, seeing strange activities going on, and is making TikTok videos of strange people going in and out of the police station, and then going to the, report on it to the authorities. I've seen weird things going on that I know nothing about or have no understanding of. And look at this photo. This looks strange, doesn't it? And then they report about it without asking the police station, who are these strange people going in and out of the building? Shouldn't you have asked Facebook, hey, here's this document that we found, maybe you could tell us what this is about? You didn't do that. You published the information and tried to imply that there was weird, shady shit going on when it turns out there really wasn't. And that makes you look shady, not them.
Well, Tyler, can I offer
Sure.
a comment? The numbness of the reaction to the Facebook or Meta papers, whatever they called, could be that, sure, but it could also be one of two possible other things. One would be the public realizes that we know this is happening, but hey, we made a deal with the devil. We need the cheap internet access. We need to be connecting with friends. So we know our data is being utilized, and we know our stuff is being pushed in front of our faces. But guess what? That's part of the living in the modern world, social media. So that's one potential numbness reaction to that. The other one would be even kind of more thought-provoking, which is that maybe people have realized, this is Facebook, for God's sake. It's a platform that can ban the president of the United States. It's too powerful. There's not that much government could do to change it. So unless the government does come up with something like the legislation that we're talking about in the one that 10 minutes ago, then we're just waiting to see what the federal government or other governments, state government could do to a powerful player like Facebook. I mean, just imagine Facebook has its own adjudication board on deciding the banning was proper or not. I mean, can you imagine? It's almost like the judge is the prosecutor. What can you do about that?
It's weird. It's weirder than that. This is
why I've been talking about it.
It's way more interesting than that. There's two other major things happening that is not being discussed at all. The two most important things in this whole issue are not even being discussed. It's that number one, Facebook is an asset of the state, meaning, as Mark Zuckerberg said to Kara Swisher, hey, you can go ahead and regulate us into being nothing if you want, or anywhere you want on that scale. However, there are countries who have social media platforms that they are using as assets to grow internationally and collect information internationally. For the FBI, Facebook is the best thing that ever happened for finding out what's going on all over the planet. Do you really want to shut it down? This is the best thing that has ever happened to the FBI, the CIA, and the federal government in terms of flexing power internationally. You want to know what every single person on the planet is doing all the time in real time? Or not? Of course they do. America needs Facebook desperately to grow as fast as it can and as deeply as it can all throughout the planet. It's it's more important that if we had to choose between Facebook and nuclear bombs, we'd probably give away the nuclear bombs and keep Facebook. That's how useful it is to the American government. And that's not being discussed. Number two, the journalists who attacked Facebook have yet to reveal that Facebook is the big bully who took their lunch money, stole all of their business revenue. And until they come clean and transparent about that, they're just lying about they've not exposed their real motive for why they keep writing all of these trumped up BS accusations based on nothing against the company. They're trying to financially punish and sabotage and create economic terrorism on their biggest economic opponent who's kicking their ass. We read the headline yesterday that digital advertising, Facebook is taking a huge, significant part of that, and more every year, and the publications are getting less and less every year. And they're furious about that. That's the reality. This is their biggest competitor. This is like Coke versus Pepsi. Coke is kicking Pepsi's ass. Pepsi keeps writing hit pieces about Coke and all the crazy shit that Coke's doing. And look at how much sugar they're putting in there. And it's giving you diabetes and all this. And it's like, oh, really? Pepsi, aren't you kind of doing the same thing? Aren't you spreading misinformation? Aren't you causing division? And you're
And
just angry
Tyler,
because Coke stole all your money.
and Tyler, I would add a number three, if I may, is from a bottom-up economic standpoint. Like we talk about Facebook or any of these platforms that are global Twitter, but a lot of people are ignored. And the U.S. starting, the underserved, unbanked, unfinanced, can't get access, can't pay a cable bill for the cable prices, and this is global. Where's the damn alternative? Because if the governments are saying this is poo-poo, then where is that platform or service? And I'm doing what I'm doing, but where is it where it's macro and global, where the people could get something for free or less than free and be able to communicate? Because it's still the same shit, voice over IP almost. Like, where is it? And so I think that would add a number three to why I think people, humans, keep using Facebook. To Ben's point, I think they will always do it because they can, and the onboarding is a low barrier and it's free, and they're like, I can communicate. I'm talking to people now. Like I'm just talking to a girl earlier that's from Nigeria. It's okay. You can communicate without the cost. So where's that?
Okay. It's a good point. So the next
So
one.
Tyler,
We got to move on. The Verge Sense, which uses computer vision to help companies understand how their office spaces are being used, raises $60 million. A company called 3Kit, which helps companies create 3D and AR product experiences to let customers visualize items while shopping online. That's huge. Raises $35 million. They're from Chicago. That's one to put a pin in. That sounds fantastic. Fiscal Note, which makes software to help companies navigate government regulations and laws. That's super important because startups don't have the resources to comply with all the government regulations. Is going public via a SPAC merger, valuing the company at $1.3 billion. The Wall Street Journal, writing about Facebook, so you know it's got to be true. An internal September 2018 Facebook memo. Oh, we're getting down to the very bottom of the barrel of the dumpster of the Wall Street Journal and digging through Facebook's dumpsters. It goes back to a memo from 2018, which found that 40% of traffic to pages went to those with plagiarized or recycled content. And the whole world says, oh, wow. Holy cow, that's amazing. Wall Street Journal, you have officially, you're now sharing shit in the bottom of the dumpster that you found an old rusty shoe that nobody cares about. Did you not just hear the headline that we read 10 minutes ago about the lackluster yawn, the global yawn and complete uncaring of your Facebook files? And then you share a story like that? That's your headline from the Wall Street Journal, that you found a memo from 2018 that 40% of traffic goes to pages with plagiarized or recycled content? Yeah, it's called resharing, you dumbass. Jesus Christ. You think anyone cares about that? You think you found a smoking gun? You found a plastic water gun from 2018 at the bottom of Facebook's garbage pile.
I should point out there are Pulitzer Prize winners who've actually been found to have plagiarized things. I mean, a lot of famous people have been plagiarists.
If that's the best that you can find out of all of the files that Frances Haugen has shared with you, out of thousands of files, you're sharing that, then my God, Facebook is a far better company than we ever imagined. If you've already exhausted all the best juice out of all the thousands of files that if Frances Haugen's done and she has nothing more to add, then Facebook is actually a far less dangerous company than we thought. So Alex Gorski, chairman and departing CEO of Johnson & Johnson, joins Apple's board of directors. Tim Cook calls him a visionary in healthcare. Oh, that's interesting. That could be very interesting. This is Apple going huge into healthcare. Huge, huge. Like this is Apple Part 2, the sequel. First it was all about tech and hardware, and now they're going big into healthcare. Huge, 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 huge. This is the future of Apple, is healthcare. And chairman and departing CEO of Johnson & Johnson joining Apple's board, what a huge move. Double Verify, which helps digital advertisers ensure brand safety, blah, blah, blah. Netflix games arrive on Apple's App Store, and users will start being able to access Netflix games through Netflix iOS app starting tomorrow. iOS 15.2 beta includes the communication safety and messages feature that Apple announced this summer as an opt-in feature parents can enable. That's very cool. And that is the big boring headlines of the day. So now we get into the tweets. Before we get into the tweets, does anyone have one that they want to share? Because I got to jump out for a minute. Tomoko, you have one about remote work will break the U.S. monopoly on global talent, something I've been saying for quite a while.
Monica is here. Does she have anything from India?
Yeah, we just read about the makeup company that IPO'd in India, Monica. Huge. Seems like they're booming.
Tyler, that is huge. She's made 6.5 billion in one day.
Wow.
Well, of course not in one day, but since 2012, she's India's only woman who's taken a company public. So this is very, very big news. I really feel, and the best part is she's actually turned 50. So the whole tech in entrepreneur, old age, and everything. The cool adage, everything kind of goes through the window with her.
I love it.
And by the way, it's a family-run business.
That.
So 3 of them have become billionaires.
Wow. Fantastic.
So Radeja shared one that Robinhood says 1.6 million people now on crypto wallet waitlist. Because people want to have a crypto wallet inside Robinhood. 1.6 million people on their waitlist. Radeja also shares one that Commerce Raymondo on how the U.S. will spend $65 billion on broadband. So the U.S. is going to upgrade its broadband. Southeast Asia internet economy to hit $1 trillion by 2030, as I told you a few minutes ago. And DoorDash to buy Wolt for $8 billion. Yes, I am a little jealous. And fintech funding in Southeast Asia triples to a record $3.5 billion this year. I told you, fintech in Southeast Asia, here it comes. And global car makers now target a $515 billion, $500 billion. Global car makers investing $500 billion in EVs. What's up, Ken?
I was about to say, when I tweeted that story out on Robinhood, and I put a comment on it, and I was only maybe half kidding, that I think some of that number for Robinhood is due to this new Burger King promotion. If you spend $5 at Burger King, they're going to send you like some crypto. It's mostly Dogecoin, but it requires that you have to have open an account at Robinhood. So I don't know how many accounts they're opening, because everybody with a $5 Burger King purchase is going to get some crypto if you open up a Robinhood account.
Okay. Could somebody share an article, Netta? You have this one about scientists find antibodies that can protect against several viruses, including many COVID variants. Or if anyone else have one they can share so I can jump out for 3 minutes?
Sorry, Tyler, I'm just on the other line. I'll come back on in a minute.
Okay.
Yes, Tyler, you go. We'll just take care of this. Okay. Anyone has any article to share? Like Messi,
I put other stuff on my Twitter account that doesn't relate to tech. If anybody cares, Al Michaels, this is an American thing, is leaving NBC and he's going to Amazon to televise football next year, when Amazon's got more football rights now for Thursday night football and stuff like that.
Wow.
I mean, it has nothing to do with tech, but it's on my Twitter account.
So I have one.
Great.
The world's largest hydro floating solar farm launched, if you will, yesterday in Thailand, and it's comprised of 145,000 floating solar panels that harvest the sun's energy during the day, and then at night, because it's a floating hydro solar uh, contraption, if you will, it's able to use the hydropower to convert energy at night as well. So, I mean, I felt really inspired and then a little proud, even though I'm not Thai. I mean, it's my second home, just to see the possibilities. And Heyman, who should be sleeping now, he said, wouldn't it be cool if there was a fish farm incorporated to it? And then we started brainstorming. I said, what about aquaponics, right? So imagine, not only this one, but if you have, people who live in places where there's a lot of sun and they have access to large bodies of water where they can have dual renewable energy sources, and then you add some fish and some plants to it, it's its own little ecosystem. So I thought that was
Lakeisha,
really cool. Yes.
yeah, Lakeisha, who helped build that? This is beautiful. But did China or what country? And it doesn't matter the politics, because it's done. I just think it's really when you talk about farming and the equator and the sun's polarity of where it's going on the earth and its position to change given climate change.
You know what?
Did
I think it's Thai actually, because Thailand has a commitment to become carbon neutral by 2050, which is what, like 20, what is that, 22 years from now? I don't know, my math is off. But yeah, so I believe that it was domestically funded. So even though we have a lot of Chinese investment in Thailand, I think, it's still one of the strongest economies in Southeast Asia. And there is a lot of, tech development that happens domestically. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's inspiring. I mean, it says it's the largest, so I don't know where the others exist, but it was the first that I had ever really come in contact with something that was multifaceted, and kind of working around the clock, if you will,
well,
converting
and this
from
is
solar to
yeah,
hydro.
and this is something I think like Meseret knows in Ethiopia, where the East or around the world can figure out technologies to make it change without the legacy system. So it doesn't matter if China, U.S., or Russia. It doesn't matter the politics. The fact that they built it and it's there and it's farming, it will occur naturally. And a lot of scientists know this. Like we're moving our North Star specifically and geographically, and also the sun, solar rays. And it's late for me, and I'm tired. Things are shifting and changing, and
Yeah,
so
I
if
mean,
you
I
can
think it's
capture
important.
that,
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, I think it's a really important point because I think sometimes we're wired to think that innovation comes from the US or maybe China or, some Western European countries. But I think it's even more inspiring when we see innovations that emerge from places that we may not have considered. I mean, it just goes to show that ingenuity is not limited geographically. And it's about, where people are and how we're able to provide the resources, starting with educational programs and pedagogy, if you will, to help people to think beyond what exists. And so the article that I posted was out of Bloomberg, but the Bangkok Post, I'll just read a little bit from the Bangkok Post today. It says a floating solar farm that's equivalent to about 70 football fields, which I love that they're using the US metric of 70 football fields in size, has begun generating power in Ubon Ratchathani, reflecting the country's push to achieve carbon neutral status by 2050. The facility in Sindahorn Reservoir, about 660 kilometers east of Bangkok, is the world's largest hydro floating solar hybrid system, which combines two methods of electricity generation, according to the state-run Electricity Generating Authority of Thailand, with while 145,000 solar panels harness power from the sun during the day, 3 turbines convert energy from flowing water at night. The $34 million solar farm, which I don't think is a huge cost. I mean, it really, it could be much, much more expensive. I don't know what the return is, but when I saw that it was $34 million, I thought, it's not a huge investment. which joined the grid on October 31st, is the first of 16 projects planned in key Thai reservoirs with a combined capacity of 2.7 gigawatts. It's part of the country's push for more renewable energy sources to reduce its reliance on natural gas, which is currently the biggest source for energy generation. And then I'll just read this last paragraph. It says Thailand will reach carbon neutrality by 2050, ahead of the earlier target of 2065. So the Prime Minister pledged earlier this month at the UN CCC. The country has set a goal to reduce all greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2065, but in the previous sentence it said that we're on track to hit it by 2050. Natural gas accounted for nearly 2/3 of Thailand's power generation last year, while wind, solar, and hydropower combined for less than 10%, according to Bloomberg. So that's the news, and I think that it's really inspiring.
Very cool.
Thank you, Latisha.
I'm back as
Oh,
well
you're back.
in case
Great.
Tyler, you needed it. I don't know if Tyler's back or not.
Yeah, he's back. But you can go through it, Neda.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. It was just an article, and I sent the link to you, Cheryl, on the back channel.
Yes.
It says scientists discover an antibody that can protect people against several coronaviruses, including the COVID-19 and its variants. Scientists have identified an antibody that can protect people from COVID-19, its variants, and other types of coronaviruses. The antibody is called DH1047, which works by binding to the virus cells and neutralizing them, preventing them from replicating. It is effective at both preventing the infection and also at helping to treat a person that has already contacted COVID. The research team at the University of North Carolina says it believes it has found a key piece that can help combat the current pandemic and future virus outbreaks. And there's a whole background on it, and it's in the link. It has it says this antibody has the potential to be a therapeutic for current epidemic. Dr. Barton Haynes, director of Duke Human Vaccine Institute and co-author of the study, said in a statement, it could also be available for future outbreaks if or when other coronaviruses jump from their natural animal host to any humans. So I think this was interesting.
Yes, that is more crazy interesting.
And I will shortly, if you tweet that one out, I will shortly comment on it with the science paper that's based on.
I just tweeted it out. Thanks. So the next one I have is that Zomato is in talks to invest in India's ship rocket. So you're now getting consolidation of the delivery companies in India. A Kenyan edtech startup called Cradle raises $1 million. So African edtech, that's fantastic. And then Rivian, which is an electric vehicle company starting off with their truck that just came off the line, and they just did their IPO. They just raised $10.5 billion in the IPO. And South Korean edtech startup called MathPresso adds Google as an investor. Here comes an edtech boom. And then we talked yesterday that there was one of the earliest Apple computers ever made, which is the Apple I, this is when they were being handmade by Steve Wozniak, and with a lot of input from Steve Jobs. Although let's make no mistake, it was Steve Wozniak who was making the computers. That this NPR is reporting. Well, we reported yesterday there was going to be an auction for one of these Apple I computers. And now the auction has closed at a price of $400,000.
That's it, Tyler?
So
I'm sorry, only $400K?
Yeah, that's a lot less than maybe if they had made an NFT of it.
40,000. Tyler, it's $40,000 US. 40,000.
The NPR article I have here says 400.
But I read another one. It says US 40,000. Yeah, for 100, so 40,000. Huh?
I'm looking at a headline right here. It says 400,000.
I think your point's better though, Tyler. If it was an NFT, that's sad. I mean, okay, I'm sorry, gosh. Yeah.
It says the first Apple I computers were sold for $666.66 in 1976. 45 years later, still fetching one, has sold for, or a still functioning one, so it actually works, and it just sold for $400,000.
I know a little bit about this, not this particular article, but normally an Apple One, an original, would go for around $1 million US is the latest going price.
I wonder why not. It says the case is made of koa wood, one of the only 6 known koa wood cases in existence, according to the auction house. Koa wood, native to Hawaii, was abundant in the 1970s, but has become rarer and more expensive due to cattle grazing and logging. But they write multiple times in the headline and in the body that it's $400,000. But $40,000 would be ridiculously cheap anyways for something like that. And then Pam in the audience sends in this one about new evidence that teeth can fill their own cavities. A drug developed to combat Alzheimer's disease can trigger regeneration of tooth dentin, the material in your teeth. So you could reverse cavities, potentially. That would be the best solution of all, for sure. And Macron says France will build more nuclear energy reactors. Oh, thanks, sweet God. Finally, some sanity in a world of craziness. France will build new nuclear reactors to help the country lessen its dependence on foreign countries for its energy supplies. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because Europe needs Russian natural gas to function. Macron's smart enough to know that Putin's not quite the nice, lovable, amazing guy that we all think that he is. That shit's they're gonna turn that pipeline off, and shit's gonna get real. You must have your own power as a country. If you are living in a country who's importing energy, you might want to think about moving out or securing your own power for your house. Because if your country's importing your power, make no mistake, at some point that will get interrupted. And then the big article of the day was Peter Jackson's digital effects company Weta sold for $1.6 billion to Unity in their ever expanding empire of the future metaverse. And Seoul, Heyman sends in an article that Seoul, Korea will be the first major city to enter the metaverse. Seoul says it will be the first major city government to enter the metaverse. On November 3, the city announced a plan to make a variety of public services and cultural events available in the metaverse, an immersive internet that relies on virtual reality. And another article about a robotic server will lend helping hand to new London restaurants as people are not coming back to work. That's okay. You can stay home. The robot will handle it. It's been nice knowing you. Good luck with the rest of your life. So we will pause there on that cheerful note and meet again in 5.5 hours. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you,
See you
everybody.
then.
We will see you
Thank
then.
you.
Have a wonderful
Thank you,
Wednesday.
everyone.